Welcome to Tanakh Talk. I am your host, William Hall, broadcasting live out of Kingsland, Texas, USA, with another episode of Rabbi Tovia Singer's Let's Get Biblical Q&A, coming to you from the Holy Land. Rabbi the man, Tovia Singer, welcome back.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. This is good.
Awesome. We missed you last week. I'm just going to make this week even that much sweeter.
That's right.
Very good. That's funny. It reminds me of my kids. We were going to the store last week sometime, and we hadn't eaten all day, and they wanted to stop and grab something to eat, and they're like, "Dad, we're starving." I'm like, "Just wait." So the longer you wait, trust me, I said, you'll enjoy the food that much more. So it kind of shut them up. But anyhow, so good to see you. You look good too, as usual. I know that goes without saying, right? Hey, we have to start every show off properly, and that is acknowledging your hair. You got the most awesome hair in the world. On a realistic note, though, started off because we're getting closer. Each show that we do draws more and more near to what's happening in July. So, I would.
Oh, yes. I'll be speaking in the United States. That's your neck of the woods.
Yes, it is.
July 10th and 11th, Dallas, Texas, BEYNEYNU.com. I'm going to repeat that in a moment. I'll be speaking in Dallas at a hotel. Let's Get Biblical Q&A, and a lot of other exciting things are going to be taking place over that weekend. I'd like you to join me. If you want to reserve a room at the hotel for the weekend or just attend the programs, this is what I need you to do. Write this down, okay? The website address where you can make all your reservations is at beynenu.com. I'm going to spell that out for you. It's BEYNEYNU.com. They're sponsoring this exciting event. We've been doing this in Texas for years, and we always get an exciting crowd and fascinating information. I'll be taking your questions, and I'm looking forward to meeting you in person.
And if you'll add events at the end of that website, I actually put it in chat and pinned it to the very top of the chat, so anybody during chat can actually go back there and just click on that link, or write it down.
One other thing is that I'll be in the United States late June, early July for this special program. If you would like to bring me to your community to speak, you can contact me. My email address is my name, Tovia Singer, the number 1, at AOL.com. Okay.
That works. Okay, Rabbi. That being said, I guess we can kick this thing off. And there's music playing in the background. Not anymore. We're good to go. Okay. So we're going to take this first call. Call you live on the air. Please tell us your name and where you're calling from.
Same kind. I'm questioning that in a previous episode, Rabbi mentioned that Paul was actually very pro-Rome. I understand the fact that he was an assimilated and very Hellenized Jew, but how could he have been very pro-Rome when ultimately it was the Romans that executed him? Correct me if I'm wrong, but beheading does not tend to promote friendship. I've always been perplexed by that. I don't see how that translates into Paul being pro-Roman. Thank you very much, Rabbi Tovia Singer.
Yeah, it really couldn't promote friendship, could it? Well said. Yeah. All right, Rabbi, take it away.
That's a very good question. So I think it was the last show we talked about that the New Testament, or let's just say 26 out of the 27 books in the Christian Bible, with the very notable exception of the book of Revelation, very pro-Roman. The Gospels are very pro-Roman, constantly seeking to exonerate the empire and hold the Jews uniquely culpable for Jesus' crucifixion. Very strange thing. I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole, but of course it's a very strange thing given that without a crucifixion, Christianity wouldn't have a religion. Nevertheless, the point is that repeatedly throughout the Gospels, throughout the letters of throughout the letters of Paul, Titus 3:1, and especially in Romans chapter 13, Paul opens by saying that every person should be subject to the governing authorities, and the reason that I pointed out that in Paul's view, that people should be loyal to the empire, to those who are governing, is not because it's pragmatic, not because it's a good idea, not because you don't want to get killed, not because, like, if you go to North Korea, make sure you don't do any. No, Paul makes the outrageous claim that, in fact, that this authority that's in place, in this case the empire, is there because it was established by God. Moreover, if you go to the second verse, Paul exhorts his readers, saying no one should ever resist or oppose this ordinance of God. Do not rebel against Rome. And get this one, because if you're rebelling against Rome, you're in essence rebelling against God. This would be going off on another tangent, but as you can imagine, in later centuries, governments would use these passages in order to insist that, in fact, that the kingdom, the leader, the authority, they're in charge, and do not question them. And your question is, well, if Paul was so pro-Roman, why would he be so pro-Roman if he was beheaded by the empire under Nero? I mean, so I know what some viewers are probably going, well, by the time he got beheaded, it was too late to change what he wrote. But in reality, that wouldn't be that's not the real answer. The real answer is the notion that Paul was beheaded by Rome is complete nonsense. It's an invention of the church, and it's mentioned nowhere in the Christian Bible, and it ought to be. So the church would go on to invent the idea that essentially everybody was murdered, everyone died as a martyr, with the exception of John, the author of the putative author of the fourth gospel. The reason why the church had to claim that John, the son of Zebedee, who the church insists wrote the book of John, he didn't. And the book of John doesn't claim that it was written by John. But the reason is that everyone knew that John is written at the end of the first century, so you had to live really a very, very long time. But again, how many times have I stood with Christians who asked the question, why would the disciples willingly die for what they knew to be a lie? And if you encounter Christians, this is going to come up very quickly. Like, why would Peter willingly be executed, crucified, not just crucified, but crucified upside down? Because he didn't feel worthy to be crucified as his Lord. Why would Paul be willing to be beheaded if he invented the religion? If your life is threatened and you're lying and you didn't have an encounter with the Christ on a road to Damascus, when at the end you would go, actually, I made it all up, and I'll be glad to recant that because it's nonsense. The answer is that this is all nonsense. It's nowhere in the Christian Bible, and very importantly, in the book of Acts, where we're told that Paul was a citizen of Rome. How does the book of Acts end? The book of Acts, which is devoted to Paul, ends with Paul being freed from prison. Now, this is very striking, because if Paul was executed, was beheaded, as legend goes, and his head bounced 3 times, and each time it bounced, a spring shut out of the ground. And you can go visit this church in Rome. It's there, spring and fountain and all. If Paul was executed, he would have been executed, we're told, by Nero, who was the bad guy. The reason why Christians think that Nero is a bad guy is a different story, and there actually is evidence for it that Nero did execute Christians. But there's no evidence for this at all. But if he did execute him, he would have been executed in, let's say, 64. When was the book of Acts written? The book of Acts is written, I'm being very conservative here, let's say 85. Okay? That's very conservative. I'm being very charitable, but let's just do that. Let's steelman this, okay? So the book of Acts is written essentially 2 decades after Paul's supposed execution. And the author of the book of Acts didn't think Paul's willingness to die violently for his faith, that wasn't worth placing in the storyline. I think not. I think all this stuff is all made up. It's not in the New Testament. And what's very striking, I find, is that when I speak to Christians and they're seeking to explain to me why I should believe in Jesus, they actually use Paul's martyrdom and Peter's martyrdom as evidence for why I should become a Christian, because why would they die willingly? And then I ask them, I can't tell you how many times this has occurred. Where does it say that Paul willingly died for his religion? That he was beheaded in Rome? And Christians earnestly look at me in bewilderment and disbelief, and with confidence, they open up their leather-bound Bible and are spinning through pages, and I'm just standing there and watching them. They're like looking for where it says that Peter was executed by Rome, and after about a minute of this, as they're going through pages, I tell them it isn't there. I mean, I don't want to mock them by letting them go on and on and on. So I tell them it's not there. That's a Roman Catholic tradition. You know, I'm not a fan of the Roman Catholic Church, but Catholic apologists who argue that Protestants are borrowing all this Catholic tradition while giving lip service to sola scriptura, these Catholic apologists are right. The Protestants kept all the good stuff. And they follow Luther, not on everything, or on pretty much everything, on what the canon would be. They followed all this stuff about, they just followed Luther on like what is in the New Testament, like who's responsible for that these books would be included in the Christian Bible. These are all Roman Catholic traditions that the Protestants accepted because they like them. So there's nothing in the Christian Bible about Paul willingly dying for his religion. Do not come to me and say you can't prove from silence. Okay, you can't. You can't use that. If Paul was executed, the book of Acts would have recorded it. That would be very important. It's a later Christian invention because the New Testament, and particularly the author of the book of Luke, is really into martyrdom and telling you how to be willing to die for your religion, like Stephen, who was not a disciple. Like Stephen, when he's killed by a horde and Paul is there, he's doing all the stuff that Jesus did and said when Jesus is being executed in the book of Luke. Very similar language, forgive them, they don't know what they're doing. So it's really, Stephen's death is very much a copy of the Passion era. So Paul very likely died in Spain because that's where he was heading if we're to take the book of Romans seriously. He probably died in Spain. He didn't die in probably. I can't be sure. That's where he said he was going. I think it's very likely. And the idea that he died willingly, this is all a part of Christian, Roman Catholic folklore that's invented, and everybody ate this up. Mary was killed. Everybody killed. I have to pull this one little piece here. I have to add this because if I didn't, I'd be remiss. I always wanted to say this. I don't know if I ever said this. Christians sometimes, when they're fiercely arguing for their religion and the wrongfulness of the Jewish faith and the wrongfulness of the Jewish people, will argue, why did the Jews suffer so much? Have you not heard this? Like, why are the Jews persecuted wherever they go? Maybe, like, Jews are getting killed all over the place. Maybe it's the fault of the Jews. Maybe because they rejected Christ. Listen very carefully, because if you've never heard this before, you've been living under a rock. Missionaries frequently argue that the Jews suffer and die because we killed Christ, because we are opposed to the Son of God, because we rejected the Messiah. Worse than rejected him, we killed him, right? So the Jews suffer. Why do the Jews suffer so much? Please tell me. What is implied is that the Jews are suffering not because the Germans are insane. Oh no, that it can't be. Blame the Jews are because they kill Christ. So it's very interesting that when the disciples are putatively executed, that's because they're so great and wonderful, and we should love them and be inspired by their death. And that shows the death of the followers of Jesus demonstrates the truthfulness of Christianity, whereas the death and suffering of Jews somehow shows the wrongfulness of Judaism. I hope you got that. And those of you who are or were ever Christians, no, I'm not making this up. Those of you who ever been in the church know that I am not strawmanning this. I'm not inventing this, okay? Why is there these unequal weights and measurements? That's what I want to know. Why is it that the death and suffering of Christian followers of Jesus demonstrates the truthfulness of the cross, but the death and suffering of Jews at the hands of Christians, which is the ultimate mind-blowing chutzpah, that demonstrates the wrongfulness of Judaism? I rest my case.
Okay, that's very well rested. All right, I'm going to move. Sorry, I had a funny phone call. Give me 1 second. Calling timing is really awkward. So we got 6 people on hold right now. So 1 second, everybody. Juggling calls takes a little bit of an artwork. Okay, caller, you're live on the air. Please tell us your name and where you're calling from. Whoop.
Carolina, hope you guys are doing well.
Hey, Reb Robbins, how are you? What's the question for Rabbi?
Fantastic. Rabbi, my question is about the Passion of Christ. So I guess what I'm confused about is I was always taught as a Christian that it wasn't Pontius Pilate that was the bad guy. He was I guess manipulated in the Christian version by I think his name was Cephas. And it confused me, like who's actually responsible for the crucifixion of Jesus? Was it the Jews or was it Romans?
My sweet brother, my sweet brother, you were a pastor, right?
Yes.
You were a pastor. Talk to me. You've read the Gospels. Let's just talk. Let's talk this through together. Stay with me. This is not a setup. You were a pastor. You must have read the Gospels. You must have read the Passion narratives. All right. Well, when you read the Passion, I will not be offended, okay? But this is, I think, really important because you spent a lot of time not only being a Christian, but a Christian leader. So tell me, No offense. When you were in the church and you read the Gospels and specifically the Passion narratives, who did you think was responsible essentially for Jesus' crucifixion? The truth. Go ahead, do it for me. Just do it. I love you, brother. It's
Okay.
all good. I'm
Okay.
from.
Yeah.
Just speak. Give it to me straight,
I
because
was
I
always.
think the viewers need to know this, so that I'm not setting this up. Tell me, you in your Christian world, when you read the Gospels, who did you think was really responsible, who was culpable for killing Christ?
The Jews.
Yeah,
And
Jews. There
I
you go.
was
Thank you.
always taught and understood that, that Rome, that he didn't want, that he washed his hands of the situation and didn't want to
Right.
do it.
Right.
But that just.
Right. Thank
I
you.
didn't want to
Thank
sound
you.
bad by saying
This
it.
is very important for everyone to know.
Rev, go ahead
My
and hang up now,
dear
buddy.
brother,
Appreciate your call.
I
Thank you.
really,
Yes, sir.
Reverend,
Thank
thank
you,
you
sir.
so much for calling in. Really. And I appreciate it. It's all good, because I need the viewers to know that I'm not making this up because I have an unfavorable view of Christianity, or that. And it's very important for the Jewish people listening to know that I'm not saying this because I don't think that Christianity is a valid religion. No, this is standard fare, and you'd have to be crazy not to think that way. Thank you, Reverend. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for. So, we did this before. In all the Gospels, the Jews are completely culpable for killing Jesus, and Pontius Pilate is exonerated. And I'll go further. The later the book chronologically, the more the Jews are held accountable and the more Rome is exonerated. And I illustrate this in volume 1 of Let's Get Biblical. And I start with Mark, the earliest of the 4 Gospels, the earliest surviving of the Gospels, where the Jews are definitely responsible, definitely culpable. And then as you move on to Matthew, as you said, we have the scene in Matthew 27, our Passion narrative, where Pontius Pilate says, I see this man as completely innocent. Pontius Pilate's wife, she makes a cameo in the book of Matthew, no other gospel. And she had a dream about him the night before. She knows Jesus is innocent. So imagine the scene in Matthew where Pontius Pilate and his wife are there screaming that Jesus is innocent of all this. This is an innocent man. And the hordes of Jews, imagine how this plays out in the movie. The hordes of Jews are screaming, crucify him. We take his blood upon ourselves and our children. We not only take upon ourselves, but all future generations. This is unique to Matthew. It's Matthew 27:25. Christian anti-Semites are not crazy. They are reading their Bible literally, a plain, natural reading. You'd have to say the Jews are uniquely responsible, and not only Jews of that generation, but all future generations. In the book of John, Pontius Pilate is having a very lucid conversation with Jesus. By the time we get to John, we're not looking at a Jesus that's mild and quiet and doesn't understand what's happening. By the time we get to John, the Passion narrative has expanded. Jesus is very much in control of the situation around him. Different, but like Luke. In Luke, Jesus is in control. In John, he's in control, just in a different way, different statements. In John, and only John, Jesus is carrying his own cross. Doesn't need anybody else to carry the cross for him. And he's having a very lucid conversation with Pontius Pilate. And he says that you have no authority over me in John chapter 19, verse 11. The only way you have any authority is unless God put it there. And in fact, those who gave me over to you, it's their sin that is greatest. And if you look carefully at the text, once Pontius Pilate realized that the Christ-killing hordes of screaming, angry Jews, he just can't control them. Somehow Pontius Pilate can't control them, which differs sharply from the Pontius Pilate we know of from historians who were contemporaries, or we shouldn't say contemporary, but yeah, who were contemporaries at the time. From the first, let's just say from first century historians, Pontius Pilate actually delivers Jesus over to them, which means the Jews. Somehow the Jews take him to be crucified. So when Christians read these texts in the Passion narratives, they are very reasonably concluding that the Jews are completely responsible for this. And that's why Christians do not express any anger or rage at Rome at all. It's all focused on the Jews. And these Christians that detest Jews, they actually are reading the text literally and correctly. And I'm very happy that there are Christian leaders that who will publicly say that this is not correct and the Jews are not responsible for killing Jews. There are such Christian leaders, and they tend to be liberal, right? And I'm kind of happy they're saying, because I don't want to be shot. I don't want to get shot, right? But they're not reading the text literally. The people who from the Westboro Baptist Church, although they act like maniacs, but they are reading the text correctly, and even in the earliest surviving piece of Christian literature, that's an epistle. It's a letter of Paul. 1 Thessalonians 2, 14 through 16. This is the oldest surviving, this is the only letter in the Christian canon that may have been written in the 40s. 1 Thessalonians could very well have been written, let's say, 49. But there's nothing older than that surviving, right? Nothing older than that. Paul says the Jews are responsible for this and are contrary to mankind for this. And when you see in the United States, those anti-Semites, like whatever they call themselves, Goyim, the Goyim Defense League, that are harassing Jews all over, they put up 1 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 14 through 16 on their signs, as does the Westboro Baptist Church. They put up John 8:44. So I'm not like setting up a straw man because I want to characterize Christianity in a way that's unfavorably. This is the content. Any reasonable person, I'm not asking you to do this because I don't want to manufacture more anti-Semites. And I think, thankfully, many Christians don't read their Christian Bible very well. But any reasonable person who opens up John chapter 18 and 19, just take your time. It's well written. Right? If you read those chapters, you're going to conclude that the Jews did it. If you sit down and just read, just right after the Olivet Discourse, so just Matthew 25, let's say 26, read Matthew 27. That's all you need. I'm not saying to do it, but if you're not sure if I am accurately characterizing how the New Testament portrays the Jews, the villainous of the Jews, the wickedness of the Jews, just read Matthew chapter 27. And you'll see and you could read 28 too. And what the cover up. It's a nightmare. So that's the answer. The answer is I had a nice man on just now who's an ex-Christian, who was an ex-reverend, right? And he's a mensch. He's a good guy. I don't know him personally, but he's called on the show before. He's a good man. So and because he's a polite, decent man, when I pressed you finally said, I guess I thought it was the Jews. Why? Because Christian people who are former Christians are embarrassed by this, and you're a good guy, Reverend. So Thank you, because I need my viewers to know this is not the ranting of an anti-Christian rabbi. I am accurately portraying what's there. And again, I return back to this point that I made earlier. Why is it that Christians claim that the suffering of the Jews demonstrates the wrongfulness of Judaism, but the suffering and death of the disciples demonstrates the truthfulness of Christianity? Think about that. Thank you very much for calling in. I don't hear anything, just so you know.
How about now? Rabbi, you can hear us now?
I hear you now.
Very good. Sorry about that. Too many buttons.
Yes, enjoying this thoroughly, and I have so many questions, but I'll try and cut it down.
Okay.
I've been watching on and off for a while, and recently I watched one of your segments, Rabbi, about a lot with Deuteronomy. So as a Christian, you know, we don't read Deuteronomy like we should, but I decided to go back and read as much as I could. And I was riveted because I didn't realize the severity of God's punishment. You know, of course, it's balanced with his love and care when you obey, but he was extremely severe with the Jewish people, you know, and I'm not clear on exactly why, but the punishments to me were, you know, and I don't judge God. Whenever I make an observation about God, I say, God knows the whole story, I don't. But it seems like he had to be extremely harsh because of Jewish people and all people. Okay, if the Jewish people are going to be that way, all people can be that way. So I'm not, you know, excluding them. So my question is this. So in the Old Testament, and specifically Deuteronomy, there's a lot of the severity of God against sin. He hates sin. And the back and forth with that. And then I was also, so it's a two-part question. Why, I know God was against the Canaanites and the Moabites because of their idol worshiping. But he said to them, have no pity on them at all. I mean, and these are descendants of Noah, are they not? I mean, even though they went wayward, I'm trying to figure the timeline there, where how did these people get so far away from God when they were from Noah? Anyway, tying that into the New Testament, yes, I heard Jerry Lewis recently, even though he's deceased. I listened to him a lot, believe it or not. But he said, you know, people that are going to hate, they're just going to hate. Whether, yes, there is anti-Semitism, but it's the people that, they're not Christian, they're not spiritual, they need an excuse to hate. So, yes,
right.
Christians...
Stay with me for a second. I don't mean to. Let me walk this through with you.
Okay.
If you go to the doctor and he could smell that there's smoke on your breath, that you smell from tobacco, your doctor is going to tell you that this is going to kill you. You got to quit, right? If he could smell alcohol on your breath when is examining you, he's going to say, this is going to kill you. And you might say to the doctor, that sounds a little strong for just inhaling a little bit of something that grows out of the ground in Kentucky. He'll say, but here's the good news. Although this stuff, that cigarettes contain more than 200 carcinogens, if you quit now, then your body is going to rebuild itself, and within 5 years, you'll have the same statistical outlook as someone who has never smoked. And that's what Deuteronomy is. First of all, thank you very much for calling in. Really, I appreciate it. So the word Torah means teaching. It literally, that word means teaching. Like Torah Hashem Tamima, Psalm 19:7-8. The Torah, the teachings of God is perfect. Meshivas nafesh, it restores the soul. The Torah is there to provide instructions. Now, notice the Torah never says, don't stick your hand in a pot of boiling water. Nowhere. Why? It's fairly obvious, right? This is very interesting. When you go to the store to buy a knife, let's say you want a new knife for your kitchen, right? It may say keep out of reach of children. Probably, maybe the box packaging will say that, but that's about it. But on a package of cigarettes, it says smoking kills. In many countries, I remember in Indonesia, there's a picture on the box of a cancerous lung, a diseased heart, right? A cancerous throat. So that hits you in the head. You know, a lady with a pregnant woman and what smoking does to someone who. So we got the pictures, smoking kills, do not smoke, like, and then you open the package again and the carton again, and every package says don't. So why, think about this for a moment. Why on a package of cigarettes, so we have pictures multiple times, it'll kill you, but you know, when knives are sold, there's not like a picture of someone with a knife in their head and say stabbing yourself in the head will kill you. And I assure you this, I'm not a doctor, but I am certain that stabbing yourself in the head is far more dangerous than smoking cigarettes. I'm not trying to be cute here. The reason is that it's so obvious when it comes to, like, don't stab yourself in the head. It's so obvious that they don't have to keep telling you that. So the Torah is telling you that if you behave in this way, it'll kill you, but return to me and I'll return to you. And nobody could die for your sins. And I encourage you to keep reading Deuteronomy, because like Deuteronomy chapter 24, verse 16, no one is going to be put to death for somebody else's sins. Nobody can die for your sins. Fathers cannot die for the sins of the sons not for the death of the fathers. Everyone shall be put to death for his own sin. It means people have to suffer the consequences of their own. Turn back to me and I'll return to you. And Tanakh is pregnant with stories about people who were very bad, and then God forgave them, right? Why is Nineveh, the capital of Assyria, of the Assyrian Empire, how do they get a book devoted to their repentance? Because they were really bad. So what a great picture that is. It's saying you can be that bad, but if you diet spiritually, diet, exercise, and take care of yourself, you can look like that. You can be healthy. So it's true. The Torah is telling you very, very serious consequences for these behaviors. And what also is delicious, that's why you got to read all of Deuteronomy. The book, at the end of it, chapter 17 as an example, tells us what are the standards of actually executing somebody. Okay, someone has to be put to death for violating this. But if you read what the level, the bar, of evidence that's necessary to execute somebody, it was almost impossible. You needed two witnesses who warned the person. You need hasra. In truth, the standard for how much evidence you needed and how much warning and the witnesses, and there had to be men who weren't related to each other or to the person there. It was so high that it was very rare that anyone was ever put to death for it. As it turns out, the Talmud admits that if there was a court that executed more than one person in 70 years, it was considered a killer court. So why have such a crazy standard? Well, the first answer is, well, we surely don't want to put to death people who are innocent, right? That would really break anybody if we would think there's one man on death row in America, right? Even if you support capital punishment for the most hideous crimes, it would break your soul to think that there's one innocent man sitting on death row in Huntsville, right? That would be the worst thing, right? So that's you. But in reality, what's happening is it's a brilliant system. It's saying, look, this breaking Shabbos put to death. But if someone's violating the Sabbath, God forbid, and people approach him and say you're violating Shabbos, you just have to stop. It's the system of evidence of how it would actually be carried out is so difficult to be carried out. It's perfect. It's just perfect. It's saying, look, this is what you really deserve for smoking. You don't, because it's not obvious when somebody is smoking a cigarette. I see people smoking and they're having a wonderful time. There's no doubt they love that cigarette, right? Right. So you have to explain to them that although cigarette smoke, I saw a dear friend of mine smoking. I didn't even know he smokes. He just pull out a cigarette. So after that conversation, he needs to kill you. He's probably watching me now. I stopped that. I need you in one piece. Hopefully he'll listen to me. So the system is this will kill you. The system also is stop smoking. Stop drinking, your body will repair itself. Isn't that marvelous? That you can quit smoking and your body rebuilds itself? That's amazing. And that's a picture of sin and repentance. So just turn away from your sinful ways. That means quit, throw down the spiritual or physical cigarette, and God will forgive your body. So, yeah, it's very harsh because it wants you to know this stuff is, and we talked in the past about Sabbath. Denying Shabbat is denying God. And we, in another show, which is up about the name of God, and I go into Shabbat, why Shabbat is so important. But God makes sure that the standard, the evidentiary standard, the bar is just so high that it's not impossible, but it's almost impossible. In fact, the guy who was so angry at God that violated Shabbos in the Torah did it deliberately. He wanted it. He wanted to bring it on as a public display. You'd have to plan it out to make it actually happen. Anyways, thank you for your question.
All right, very good. We'll move on to the next caller. Caller, you are live on the air. Please tell us your name and where you're calling from.
It's Jerry in Florida.
Hey, welcome. What's the question for Rabbi today?
My question for Rabbi is, it might be a dumb question, but is there significance behind the number 12 tribes? Is there a reason for that, or is it just because that's how many children were born, or is there significance with that?
Sounds like the 12 disciples also rolled off in the New Testament. That's kind of wild.
Well, he's not asking that. You're just asking, is there significance to the number 12 for the 12 children?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes,
Yeah.
I can give you answers to that. About the star. I don't think those are valuable answers. I don't really have a good answer for you. There's no doubt, as William has just said, that the church would use that number 12 because there are 12 sons that were given to Jacob who were all blessed and given special mandate. Joseph is split too, Levi. But I don't really have a very convincing answer to your question. There are a lot of answers, but I don't think any of them are very particularly compelling.
Thanks for your call. Okay, 1 second. I've got to find the last call that was supposed to be up next. 1 second, bear with me. All right. That's funny. The calls don't come in until I actually have somebody live. let's just take this one. Caller, you're live on the air. Please tell us your name, where you're calling from. Caller, you're live on the air.
Okay, I'm Paul from Virginia.
Paul from Virginia. Welcome, Paul.
And the question I have pertains to Satan and temptation. I'm familiar with the idea and concept of the Yetzer Hara and us having to deal with that to make choices. I guess one of the best illustrations I heard of that was someone conversing with an Native American Indian, or perhaps Canadian Indian, and he said, it feels like two dogs fighting within me, a white dog and a black dog.
Right.
And they asked him, which one wins? And he says, well, there are two versions. The one I say sick 'em, or the one that I...
Right, the one that you feed.
It was apparently an American joke, which I don't... Go ahead.
It was more of not a joke, but a parallel.
Well, anyways, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah.
I'm listening.
Then also we look in the book of Job, and we see Satan, the angel, coming before God, and God presenting Job to him to test him. But recently I came up with and wondered, what about Adam and Eve? Where did their test originate? Because God, or Hashem, says that I create evil and the good. So what is Hashem's involvement in their test in the garden? And why is the one who accomplished the test, or punished for accomplishing it, if that makes sense?
Sure does.
Okay.
You're good. You're good.
Go ahead and hang up now and tune in for your answer.
Good.
Thank you so much for your call. Bye-bye. Go ahead.
That's good. I didn't realize how good your question was going to turn out. So your question sort of went into this amazing piece of music at the end when you said, well, why was the Nachash cursed, right? Why was the serpent cursed? After all the serpent is doing is he's doing the service of God. So as it turns out, that's not what's occurring there. First, we don't need a good inclination. I just want to comment on that. Our default baseline, because we are creating the image of God, is to serve God. And if there was no Satan in the world, our default baseline is to serve Hashem. Every human being is created in the image of God. And our natural disposition is to serve Him. That's why when you look at the faces of people, regardless of their religion, they are craving a relationship with God. The Torah is simply guiding the person to say, this is how to connect to me, and don't relate to me this way. This is how you connect to me. This is be guided by the Torah. Question is, what is happening in the Garden of Eden, particularly in Genesis chapter 3? If the serpent is somehow you may want to call him Satan, but he's not really. But he certainly is giving very bad advice. Why was he punished? Look carefully. He's not really punished. What is the punishment of the serpent? Everything will taste like dust. That's one heck of a punishment. That means food is everywhere and plentiful. What piece of land, what part of the world is considered a picture of everything that's evil? Egypt. Why? Because the people who live in Egypt never need rain. Let's contrast that with Adam and Eve. What is their punishment? It's precisely the opposite. All the things they crave and want will not come easily. So I want to illustrate to you first that this is very clear. Adam, by the sweat of your brow will food grow. Okay? You want to eat? You're not going to be anything like the serpent. Oh no, you're going to have to work. Woman, to conceive, that's going to be a hardship. So what does that force Adam and Eve to do? To turn to God. Because you're always going to need God. Why? Because you want food, because you want children. So in another lecture, I talked about the two different words for curse. So, and this is why, my dear brothers and sisters, I urge you so frequently to become intimate with the Hebrew language if you want to be intimate with God. Mikalel means to curse in a conventional sense. It means it just curse, like it's like a very bad thing, right? Like someone who curses their parents, that's a very grave sin. So that's the word mikalel. But there's another word, arur, and one of the things I've shared with you is the Hebrew language. Biblical Hebrew is a very tiny language, very small, less than 9,000 words. When you have a language that's so tiny, that means that there aren't extra words. The word arur means curse as well, but baked into the root of that word is really to shed light. I'm doing something with you because I want to bring out something in you. I will bless those who bless you, Genesis 12, verse 3. U'mekalelcha aor, the Torah says. But those who curse you, aor, a totally different word for curse. I will curse. But what's the difference? Or the word or in there means light. I'm going to shed light. It means I'm never going to give up on you. So an arur curse, which is used in Genesis chapter 3, is what? What kind of curse is it? It's not really a curse. Your English translations don't have a choice because English doesn't have that kind of word. There's no word that comports to that. So that's why you're so messed up reading translations. That's why you desperately need to learn Hebrew. Okay. So when God is cursing Adam and Eve, what is he doing? Think. He's putting them in a predicament to need to pray to God. You're going to need me. I'm going to put you in a predicament where I'm going to force you to have a relationship with me. You want babies? We're going to have a talk. It's like your kids, like, right? I want to hear my kids call me, right? My daughter made me happy this morning, and I got the phone call. I love that, right? So Hashem is saying, I'm going to put you in a predicament. You're going to need me. And what's the land of Israel? How different it is than Egypt. Egypt is the serpent, meaning it never needs rain, and there is virtually no rain because Egypt is a desert. But it's got the Nile, a reliable source of fresh water that made Egypt the breadbasket of the Mediterranean. They don't need to pray. It's not about Egyptians personally. It's very much important for you to understand. So the serpent is cursed. Like a snake eats once every 2 weeks and you can eat whatever and he's done. He never needs God. Okay? Conversely, the man and the woman need God. In the land of Israel, it only rains during the winter. Let me rephrase that because it never rains during the summer, and essentially the vast majority of the rains are in the winter, December, January, February. The rains continue till Passover, but it tapers off. The rains start, let's say, in October, but if you don't get your rains in the middle of the winter, you're done. And in fact, this year in Israel, there's not been a lot of rain. This has been a very dry year. In contrast, last year we had an excessive amount of rain. But if you don't get your rain in Israel, you're going to start talking to God really fast and really hard. And we have special prayers where we ask God for rain. We talk to God for rain. Why? We don't have a Nile River. You see, so Israel is the Adam and Eve. We really have no natural resources here to speak of. It's all spiritual. And we are utterly dependent on God. And if God turns off the water during the winter, there is no water. This is not Chicago, New York, where it can rain any time of the year. Like in New York or Miami, it can rain right in the middle of summer. Thunderstorms, no problem. Here, it never rains in the summer. Never. Okay? So now we're getting a better picture of what's going on. So the serpent is not really cursed. He's arur because there's light. We're deriving information from what happened. You'll never need me. So the ones who are my enemy, who really I'm done with you, so that means we don't need to talk. That's why I'll tell you this. I'm going off track, a drop. That when Hashem is very angry with a nation, he has that nation expel the Jews. When a nation expels the Jews, that means Hashem is done with that nation. I know we think of it differently because it's true that the Jews go through tremendous Yisurim, suffering when we're expelled, for sure. But when Spain expelled the Jewish people in 1492, and a handful of years later Portugal did the same, God is saying, I'm done with you, because the Jews are in a land to bring light to those people. And if a nation expels its Jews, they're expelling their only source of connection to God, the light, which is the role of the Jew. Now, I can go off on this and what the serpent really is. So people think of the serpent as Satan. It's really far more sophisticated than that. The serpent is an animal that behaves like a human being, that has the qualities of a human being, just really quickly. The serpent can do what is different from all the other chayot, all the other beasts of the field. Why? Highly intelligent, can walk, can talk, and likes good food, hence the punishment. If you can walk, talk, and think at a very high level, and you're a connoisseur of good food, what does that sound like? Sounds like a human being, doesn't it? What was the serpent's gripe? Dial it back to Genesis 2. The gripe the serpent had was Adam had just been shown all the animals of the field and rejected them, named them according to their character, but discovered in that process that it was hopeless for the dating game of finding a spouse, right? And you know how the story continues. That's when the serpent emerges. Going, why is the serpent? Anyway, what is the motive of the serpent? I know he's Satan, but why is the Satan? Why is the serpent inserting himself there? Because he's going, if anybody was a candidate, I was that candidate. Okay. But going back, I don't want to go off the derech here. The clear thing is this: the worst thing you can have is everything. I know wealthy people who are very, very wealthy, and they have big problems with their children. Marbe nechosiv, marbe daigos. People have a lot of things, have many problems in their personal life. And very often people who don't have that much wealth have children that are loyal to them, who are not raised in that fashion. So that's the key. Hashem wants to keep Adam and Eve wanting and talking, and the serpent, you don't need anything. And that's why Egypt is a picture of sinfulness. Like, don't do like what they do in Egypt. Constantly a refrain. Because Egypt is the source of sinfulness. Thank you for your question. I don't hear anything, just so you know.
These buttons, got to keep remembering putting the buttons in.
So, you know what? I'm sure, good. Like, after we're doing the show for like 18 years.
Yeah. What we're doing now is actually a new trick, which I'm really grateful for, because
we had to work the old trick out first.
We had to, yes.
Yeah. All right.
Okay.
All right, got it. You're doing a new trick.
Okay, very good. All right, we're going to take this caller. You're live on the air. Oh, wait. Hold on. I got to see which one it was. 3.
William is trying a new trick. Everybody, duck and cover. Hide under your desk. William is trying a new trick out. Where's the bomb shelter? You know, this studio where I'm filming from is a bomb bomb shelter. I'm not
That's
kidding,
awesome.
Really.
That's really cool.
Yeah, I'm in a bomb shelter.
Nice.
Because
nice.
I
was going to say, no, because you're the bomb. You're the bomb.
So, ladies and gentlemen, William is trying something new. Duck and cover. Okay.
You're on fire. Okay, caller, you're live.
Puts the fear of God in me.
Oh, good. I'm alive, am I?
Religious. Go ahead.
That's funny. Yes, Paul, you are live on the air.
Yes.
I believe this is
Change
Paul
your
from the
name,
UK.
please. Okay.
Go ahead, Paul.
That's correct, yeah. So a little question for the good rabbi there. I've just noticed there's some similarities between the teachings in Matthew and those in the Talmud. So I'm wondering if the Talmud took them from Jesus, because the Talmud was written, in the 4th century CE, so apparently after the Gospel of Matthew. I'll just give you one example. Matthew 7:3. Why do you see the speck in your brother's eye, but not the beam that is in your own eye? Compare this with the Talmud. Do not say, take the splinter out of your eye. He will retort, remove the beam from your own eye. So that's in the Talmud. I think the rabbi will recognize that. So the other possibility is not necessarily that the Talmud took it from Jesus, but that the teachings of the Talmud were in circulation orally before Jesus was even teaching. So the writer of the Gospel of Matthew, whoever he was, could have known that and then put it into the mouth of Jesus. Or maybe those teachings of the Talmud were added later, maybe in the 3rd century, to the Gospel of Matthew. Matthew was maybe started in the 80s, but it doesn't mean to say there weren't additions to Matthew after that. So that's kind of what I'm wondering. So has the Talmud taken it from Jesus? Maybe Jesus' teachings were quite widespread. Or has the author of the Gospel of Matthew actually taken it from the Talmud and put it into the mouth of Jesus?
Right.
Paul, thank you so much for your call.
Thank you, Paul.
Go ahead and hang up now until you've answered.
Shall I hang up now?
Yes, go right ahead and just listen in for your answer. Thank you. Bye. Bye-bye.
Okay, a great question. So, although the Talmud goes through its final editing phase in the 6th century, let's say about the year 500, the Talmud covers the discussions of people going all the way back to the 2nd century BCE. So it's not like the Talmud is just like 6th century stuff. So it's hundreds after the New Testament. Like Rabbi Gamliel, who was a very prominent contributor to the Talmud, the Mishnah, to be very specific, is mentioned in the Christian Bible. My friend, as I've said to you many times, are there any true things in the Christian Bible? Absolutely. But anything true isn't new, and anything new isn't true. So, of course, like today, so many religions are pregnant with Jewish teachings. We would expect that. We would anticipate that. Judaism was a very popular religion in the 1st century. Probably 10% of the empire. It was very, very high. So, of course, not only is the Talmud, but so many oral laws are on display in the New Testament. We encounter phylacteries in the Christian Bible. The word is there for the first time. And we find these things in the Dead Sea. In the Dead Sea, we find the phylacteries. So there are many idioms, traditions, like Jesus is named in book of Luke at his circumcision. That's a Jewish tradition. So this is not complicated. This is not rocket science. The authors of the Christian Bible were familiar with Jewish traditions wherever they lived. I don't think any of the writers of the New Testament were here in Israel, but in the Levant, whether they were in Antioch, they were very familiar with Jewish traditions. It was everywhere. And therefore, when we would expect and anticipate that when Paul speaks about, as an example, that he received lashes from the Jews, right? So the Torah says that when a person is whipped as a punishment, he receives 40 lashes, right? But the oral tradition is that actually it's 40 minus 1. This may seem pedantic, may sound like I'm being picayune, but the oral law is it's 39, not 40. And Paul says he received 40 minus 1. So the entire corpus of the New Testament is filled with Jewish traditions about a Sabbath day journey found in the beginning of the book of Acts. What does that even mean? It's why the Christians who say they don't believe in the oral Torah, they don't mean bad. They don't know any better. They say silly things like that. They don't know because their pastor tells them that. But the oral tradition is all over the Christian Bible. They knew it well. And because they're dipping into it. And the oral tradition is found in Islam, all over the place in the Quran, everywhere. So, everyone was very familiar with Jewish. I'm using the word tradition very loosely here, meaning oral Jewish law, Jewish idioms, Jewish teachings. The idea of you should love your neighbor, you should love your neighbor as you love yourself. Why does the Torah even say that? Why don't you just say love your neighbor? Why do we need as you love yourself? Why is that there? And could you really ever love somebody else the way you love yourself or care about yourself? But maybe that means that if you wouldn't want something to be done to you, if it's hateful to you, then don't do it to anyone else. Or maybe you'll be incapable of loving somebody else unless you love yourself. And if you don't love yourself, you're going to have a hard time loving somebody else, right? All these ideas, of course, are throughout, are very, very well known. And it remains to this day that this is the source. So yes, I have an entire chapter in Volume 1 of Let's Get Biblical on the oral Torah. And all the laws of carrying on the Sabbath, of what you do with an injured animal on the Sabbath day, that's all in the Christian Bible. They were very aware of this, that we don't normally touch an animal on the Sabbath, but not talking about a pet, talking about like sheep, like livestock. But if the animal is injured, you can help the animal out of a pit. All that is used. The prohibition of bloodletting wounds on Sabbath, creating them, but the exception for circumcision, that's all oral Torah, and that's in John chapter 7. Those of you who know the New Testament know, oh, yeah, there you go. So all this, yes, the Christian Bible is loaded with oral Torah, and if this seems weird to you, think about, if you're not Jewish, think about how many things you know about Judaism just because its ideas and teachings are spread around the world, well known. Now, in a sense, the Jews have competition because there are two other Abrahamic religions. In the first century, there was no other Abrahamic religion. The rest of the world was pagan. Only the Jews believed in one God. Only the Jews had the teaching of the Torah. This was uniquely Jewish. So, very much so. In that chapter in Let's Get Biblical, Volume 1, it's like one of my favorite chapters. And I don't think I may have written it in one night. I think I just wrote it through. And I go through all this, and it was one of the chapters I really, really enjoyed writing. And sometimes when it just comes to you, it just flows. That chapter flowed. So I go through this. I go through this point exhaustively. It's really quite delightful that we find this sounds crazy, but the earliest written record of the oral Torah is found in the Christian Bible. Really, in many cases. So thank you for your question.
Okay, moving on. Caller, you are live on the air. Please
Do we have time?
Well, we're only about an hour and 5 minutes in. We started pretty late today.
Oh,
right.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
So if that's all right.
There you go. Sure.
Okay, sure. Let me get rid of this other caller fast. All right. Caller, you're live on the air. Please tell us your name, where you're calling from.
You're talking to me, William?
Yes, go right ahead. You are live on the air.
Okay. Rabbi Singer, it's Aaron from San Diego. I want to say it's an honor and a privilege to be able to speak with you. One thing, Rabbi, I read through your two books, and I came from Christianity, and then I went to Messianic Judaism for a little bit, studied under Rabbi Barney Caston here in San Diego, and now I attend a Chabad. Been attending Chabad for the last 7 years. One question I have a lot of questions, so I'll probably be calling every Sunday. But
that's fine.
I wish I could talk to you outside of this, but let me just go to one question I'll have here. Regarding Isaiah 53, and obviously that's the famous chapter that Christians use to kind of say that, Jesus, it speaks about Jesus. So on the Chabad website itself, when we're talking about Pesach and happy Pesach, happy early Pesach in about 3 weeks, it talks about cup 3, and it says cup 3 refers to, in Hebrew, Shivra Debe Rebbe, the leper of the house of the Rebbe. Indeed, our illnesses he did bear, and our pains he endured, yet we did esteem him injured, stricken by God, and afflicted. Now, again, I want to preference and put this in context, saying I'm not saying this speaks of Jesus, I know this speaks of Isaiah.
Stay with me for one. I don't know if you're able to hear me.
You can hear the rabbi, right?
So if you can, because the question just needs to be tight. If you could just sort of form. You're asking me the question based on the tractate in Sanhedrin 98b. Is that the question?
Yeah, so I just wanted to, and I'll just finish with this. The context of this, I'm not saying that Isaiah 53 speaks of Jesus, because obviously it speaks of Israel with the context of Isaiah. But why would Chabad, as we know they are Orthodox Jews, refer to Isaiah, speaking of the leper of the house of the Rebbe? They refer to this verse and some of the verses in Isaiah 53 as speaking of the Mashiach. Right. So, and you can go to the Chabad website itself.
I got that. So, are you Messianic now, or have you left the Messianic movement?
Yeah, I left. I study under Rabbi Greenberg out here in Chabad of San Diego. I'm not Messianic now. Your videos and your books have.
Let's think about this for a moment. Stay with me. So, is the servant in Isaiah 53, if it includes all the righteous remnant of the Jewish people, would the Messiah be a valid member of that remnant? What do you think?
Of course.
Think about that. So, anyway, thank you very much for your question.
Okay, go ahead and hang up now until you answer. Thank you.
Let's explore that together. So if you're reading Sanhedrin 98, the Talmud presupposes that you read page 97. Page 97 tells us that the Messiah is together with other of the suffering members of the Jewish people at the gates of Rome. All of them are wounded. All of them are. The only difference between the Messiah and the others at the gates of Rome is whereas the others, poor Jews, the other suffering ones, change all their bandages at once, the Messiah changes the bandaging or the dressing of one part of his body at a time. Why? Because the context is that at any moment he could be called forward, he could step forward to usher in the Messianic age. If only what? The context. This is why the context is so important. If only the Jewish people would return. Isaiah 59, verse 20. Okay, so I want every person listening to my voice right now, if you read any holy book and you begin with page 53, as in the case of Isaiah, or page 98, as in the case with Tractate Sanhedrin, you're going to wind up in a lot of trouble because you're reading it out of context. So my approach is the following, that Isaiah is my chief commentary on the book of Isaiah, okay? If you don't think that is axiomatic, you don't want to be studying with me, because that's the presupposition. The presupposition is that Isaiah is our chief commentary on the book of Isaiah. So when I'm studying Isaiah 53, I'm going to look at the servant songs in context. Isaiah 41, 8, 9, 42, 6, 43, 10, 11, 44, 1, 44, 21, 45, 4, 48, 20, and 40. You know where this all goes, 49, 3. So it's very important that our approach is to always use Isaiah as our chief commentary on Isaiah. Now, what rabbis do, for the most part, is do that. They may not always explain to you they're doing that. That's why I'm teaching Isaiah right now. But that's what we're all doing, is we're just using the Bible to teach itself. And it's really all packed into there. But I assure you of this, if you detach Isaiah 53 from the chapters that introduce it, you will wind up in the church. You will wind up worshiping Jesus, for sure, because it's out of context, okay? In the same way, when you're looking at the Talmud and Sanhedrin, I'm not going in detail on it, but you have different Jewish people at that time who are wondering who could possibly be the Messiah. And each one thinks their rabbi, I think he's an ideal candidate to be the Messiah, okay? But here's the key point. If you're studying the Talmud with me, this is going to be always my approach. And I want to convince you, I want to persuade you to adopt my approach. And that is that the Talmud, Tractate Sanhedrin, has to be your chief commentary on the Talmud, Tractate Sanhedrin. Does that make sense? Right? Okay. So what we should do then is, if you're reading Perek HaChelek, which is the last chapter of the Tractate Sanhedrin, and you're reading page 98, I would submit to you that the context is determinative, and you're very likely to figure out and unpack what's happening by reading the pages that have introduced it. Because the editors of the Talmud presume that if you're on 98, you've already read 97. Now, what I'm saying to you is not rocket science. I'm sure you're going, well, that makes sense, right? So just do that. Before you go to Rabbi Google or Pastor Google, just do that. And I think if you are those of you out there who do not like the Jewish faith and want Jews to convert to Christianity, I encourage you not to do that. I encourage you, if you want to convert Jews to another religion, make sure to hit them with all these passages and putative quotes, and make sure you rip them out of context and just rapid fire that to the point that the person won't even know what's going on. That's what I'd encourage missionaries to do. If you want to be good missionaries, is just rip these texts out of context. And given that you as missionaries probably never read the original text and just got them from another booklet, that's what's likely to happen. So, Tractate Sanhedrin, page 97, is a commentary on 98. 97 tells us all the suffering of the Jewish people. They all have bandages on them. They're all wounded. All of them are. Messiah is no more or less wounded than the other. The distinction is that the Messiah has to change his bandages one part at a time. Therefore, we conclude the following. It is not correct to say that according to the Jewish people, according to Isaiah 53 is speaking about Israel, and according to the church, it's speaking about the Messiah. That's really not accurate. The accurate way to convey this is that Isaiah 53 is speaking about the righteous remnant of the Jewish people, the Messiah included, not excluded. Christianity, conversely, advances the idea, claims, and argues that it's about the Messiah alone and none of the other of the faithful, the Jewish people, who are outlined very clearly as an example in Zephaniah chapter 3, verse 12. Okay? So I say this to you, my friends. When missionaries quote the Talmud, why are they doing that? Because they can't quote the Bible. So they're going to the Talmud. They're assuming that you've never read it, and they've never read it, so why should you read it? If they're quoting 98 or whatever it is, just go, you know what? I probably should read this chapter. Just read it in context. If you do that, because there's no magic going on here. It's not like a magic show. It's not like I've hidden stuff in my... Just all I'm doing is going through the text. So if you read 97, you'll get 98, and you're going to be just fine. Thank you for your question.
Awesome. Rabbi, we've got about 10 minutes left. Do you got time for one more?
Sure.
Okay, cool. All right, caller, you're live on the air. Please tell us your name and where you're calling from.
Thomas in New Jersey.
Thomas, welcome.
William, thanks for having me on. And Rabbi Singer, bless you. My question is, after 15 years, I turned to Hashem. Why does, in Revelation, the biggest revelation of Revelation is, why doesn't John qualify for the authorship of the book of Revelation, according to Revelation 10:11, where the author is commanded to prophesy again about nations, languages, and kings, to which this, being John's only alleged prophecy, fails to do so. And the only one who does qualify seems to be Daniel. In Daniel 10, Daniel says he was in mourning for 3 weeks over a vision that he had, and he never describes the vision.
Okay, well, thank you for your question.
Okay. Hey, very good. Thank you so much, and go ahead and hang up now until you answer. Have a great day. Bye. Okay, guys, last call. Rabbi, take it away.
Sure. This will probably surprise you, but I think the author of the book of Revelation is a man named John. In fact, I have no reason to think that the author of the Gospel of John was John the son of Zebedee. So it turns out John the son of Zebedee is never even mentioned in the book of John. And if what Christians presuppose that the disciple whom Jesus loved is John the son of Zebedee, then whoever wrote the book of John says that he got some of that information from him. So the author, at the end of the fourth gospel, is conveying quite transparently, quite clearly, that he is not John. Okay. In contrast, the author of the book of Revelation was a fellow who claims to be John from Patmos. I have no reason to doubt that. I have no compelling reason to think that he is the same author as the fourth gospel. Now, while you have many Joannian image, you have a lot of Joannian imagery in the book of, well, obviously John, but in the book of Revelation. The book of Revelation had all these books in front of it. I mean, whoever wrote it, well, I presume his name is John, had the book of Daniel for sure, because he quotes Daniel extensively. And he was very familiar with the notion, the Joannian notion, that Jesus is a lamb, right? Paul also advances the idea that Jesus is our Passover lamb, 1 Corinthians 5:7. That doesn't mean that I think that Paul authored the book of John. So we find these similarities because whoever wrote the book of John, and I assume it's John, not John the son of Zebedee, but it's a person named John, he had in front of him he definitely had Tanakh in front of him because he's quoting it. He's quoting Daniel constantly because Daniel is an apocalyptic work, especially the last 6 chapters. So John is taking from all these sources that he had in front of him. That doesn't mean it's the same author. The book Joseph Smith, well, in the Book of Mormon, we have extensive quoting of Isaiah. I think probably it may be more, but it has to be at least 20 chapters of the book of Isaiah quoted in the Book of Mormon. I don't think that there's a relationship there, except that whoever authored the Book of Mormon, I'll presume we both agree that it didn't come from an angel in upstate New York, that whoever put this together had access to all the other books and then very selectively chose from them in order to insert into that book. So I don't think this is complicated at all. But I don't know who wrote the 4th Gospel. And the author of the 4th Gospel does not mention the authorship. So it's not a falsely ascribed book. The author of the 4th Gospel just makes like the other 3, like the Synoptic Gospels, makes no mention of who wrote it, where it was written. We know nothing about it. Later on, church fathers would ascribe the 4th Gospel to John. Not Justin, not Ignatius. They didn't know anything about this. Irenaeus is really the first church father to say, these are the 4 Gospels, assigned the 4th Gospel to John for sure. The 4th century church father, the historian of the church, Eusebius, would say that the Irenaeus, the bishop of Lyon, in let's say about the 180, was basing it on a church father named Papias. Nothing of Papias survives. So it's very, very mixed up. But this is all Roman Catholic tradition, much, much later, which kind of ties us back into that first question. Anyways, thank you so much for your question. I want to, William, just remind the viewers again that I'm looking forward this summer in July, Dallas, Texas, July 10th and 11th. I'd like you to join me. 2 days studying together. Let's get biblical. Your questions. If you want to sign up, you want to join us, hotel. It's really exciting. Go to the organization that's sponsoring my visit. It's Beinenu.com in their events section. So it's BEYNEYNU.com. I'll be in the United States. During that time, I'll actually be arriving a little early. If you want to sponsor a program, do contact me by email. My email address is toviasinger1, TOVIASINGER, the number 1 at AOL.com. Great show, William.
Very good. And also there are questions. By the way, again, that's Beinenu.com/events will take you directly to the events page. You just add a / and then events at the end of that, and you're good. And also that is actually pinned in the chat at the very top. So, pardon me, you can actually copy that down, or maybe after we finish the show, you can just click on that link and it'll take you straight there. So, Rabbi, do we have, how many spaces are available left? Because I know it was going pretty quickly when we first started this thing. So,
we had this problem the last time when we did the program last year, and that is that it's sold out. So I'm encouraging you to, to lock that up.
Absolutely.
And it's a pretty good deal.
Yeah.
I think 2 days, whatever.
Right.
Anyways, it's on the site.
Yep.
Go there.
Absolutely. Thank you all for tuning in, Rabbi. You're awesome, and we look forward to seeing you
Always.
same time, same place next week, Hashem willing. So y'all have a wonderful week. Take care. Peace. Bye. Hello, my dear friends. Hope this message finds you well. If you like the way this channel is going, and the channel has been a blessing to you, please consider supporting the channel by going to the website, TanachTalk.com, TANACHTALK.com. Thank you once again for your time and for supporting Tanakh Talk.
Shalom.
תמיד כולם ביחד, חשוב מכל חשוב והכרחי להיות ביחד. איפוק זו העוצמה, ויתור זו הגדולה, השאיפה